Hello, everyone. My introduction is going to be fairly short. We'll just have to remember one important thing. I entered this room at 17:51, and we will leave here at 18:51. This morning, I had an excellent session with Vladimir Sedov, who's now the owner and founder of Laskona Life Group. And we've touched upon this topic that we're going to talk about and some numbers associated with that, because there is one fundamentally important demographic trend that is going to change everything if we're talking about biotech. Let me add a few numbers. And let me step back for a second and say that we're not just using the English word longevity in this title. It's not just about living long or technically extending life expectancy. It's about living long in good health and happily. It's about retaining all of our cognitive, mental, and bodily faculties intact. And a few words of statistics. In 25 years, will be in 2050. Can you imagine this? And I'm looking at this room and I realize that with the probability of 90%, we are all going to end up there. And at that time, there will be the largest number of people on the planet, 10 billion. Of course, 10 billion is a huge number instead of the 8 billion that we have now. But what's even more important is that there will be more people of those who are 65 plus. There will be more of those who are less than 12. That's a colossal challenge demographically, and this is something that will have repercussions for all of our social institutions, such as hospitals. Let's leave alone pensions, because paying that much in retirement money is going to be a challenge for any state. And these are the things we're going to be talking about today, because this is the main trend. And I'd like to start with you, Piotr. You were very eloquent in one of your interviews, saying that this demographic switch to a more elderly population is happening not because we want this, but it's happening by itself, because as a species, we've chosen this task, or whatever you call it, because this is useful for us. So, two questions. Is biotech catching up with this demographic trend that we observe? And secondly, if we were to select one particular thing to ensure that this shift happens without any serious repercussions, which direction should we look into? The demographic transition is happening not because we wanted this to happen, but because that's how a species is responding to the technological development, and it means that many things are changing qualitatively, many things that we're used to. Today's medicine is treating diseases, and people get sick as they age, and some people believe that if we invent drugs to treat all diseases, we'll live forever. But unfortunately, aging is not just about diseases, but it's about decline of functions and faculties, cognitive and whatnot. And those who are young, or rather those that are old, they of course they pale in comparison with what they used to be when they were 30 or 40. So in order to live in an age where people remain productive as they age, we need to use the science about aging and study that, not the diseases that lead to that. Talking about, treating aging, that's an amazing thing. The devil is in the details. Anna, I will switch to you now, because let me use one more quote. I will be going back to your interview at various points. and several of your interviews, so that we can go back to what you have been discussing earlier. Your quote goes like this: "We can only give therapy to sick people and treat specific disease, but aging is not a disease." So this dovetails with what has just been said by Piotr. What then do we need to recognize, and what should be recognized as a disease so that we could treat it, and how such legalization could help biotech as an industry and give it an impetus to move forward? Thank you very much for your question. What we see happening at this point is this. If we have a task to develop a therapy, we would do this for a specific disease and a certain set of indications. And aging is not considered to be a disease. And as a biopharmaceutical company, a biotech company, I cannot develop a drug against aging because I will never take it to the market. And people are going to be able to buy it or take it. But very often, disease is different from that. There are various stages in the disease's progression. And an advanced stage disease is very different from a stage when an individual is still healthy. And so we have to act as quickly as possible at an earlier stage and as early as possible. But here the shift is on disease more than anything else, and we can do very little for the healthy people in that sense. But initiatives have come up recently. There's a contest known as X Prize. It's an international contest where teams vie for making an individual 10 years younger. There are hundreds of teams that got involved in this. There's a 5-year trial, and the goal of the trial is to make people younger.
And they are creating these criteria because we need to understand what drug can help in what area. They look at muscular function, cognitive function, and there are some parameters that people have when they're 60, and the task of the company to make sure that these people have these parameters as if they were 50. So we're talking about the correction of some functions like cognitive functions, immune functions, making sure that these drugs are using these goals. And I think that the medicine will arrive there. If you look at the 19th century, when we were diagnosing some things like, okay, you have cough with blood, that means that you have this and that disease, and now you can make a blood test and detect disease earlier. But I mean, whether we will be able to accelerate that process and influence it, that's the question. You are one of the most measured people in the world. Have you measured your rejuvenation progress? How many years were you able to win back? I think it's a bit early to talk about that, because anyone before they reach 55 around could, with proper lifestyle, have indicators of 35-year-olds. If you are more than 30, you can move back. My biological age is 32. My real age is 42, so I have not started to become older because I started my experiment 10 years ago. But that's not so, actually, because our biological age is a tricky thing, but it is the worst way to measure it, you know, if you compare it with others. So what is the future here? I think the future is now. First of all, there are some dedicated indicators for the age and for separate systems, because the organs and the systems are getting old in a different way. In many ways, it's a huge checkup, and there are some stage-based biological age assessment. So people who are 35 and 39 are not that different, but those who are 39 and 46, they have a huge difference, and because this is where there is this 45 years threshold when people start to get older. I think that in 10 years, therefore, it will be easier to assess my state. That's true. We have a mega trend. We have an understanding in the field that everything is going to change, and for sure, we have fantastic technologies. I am going to have one quote. It's, might be a bit controversial, but still. We have Dario Amadei, who is the CEO of one of the companies that is, of course, related to AI. And during the Davos Forum this year, he said that the following: AI can double the lifespan of humans, but then he says in the next 5 years. Piotr, a question to you again, because I have to ask that. I understand that my question is going to be pretty naive. Maybe you are not agreeing with this forecast, but still, if we talk about the technologies that we have now already, what does that give to the industry, to the longevity industry in biotech? Can we say that new technologies will lead to this paradigm shift, to the shift in research and to the shift in drug distribution? What is happening in this industry due to technologies? How technologies disrupt this industry? I would like to comment here, to comment on the quote of this visionary. There are drugs that might increase your lifespan by a decade, but they will need 2 decades to be developed, because you need to test them first of all. Now, this quote really reflects this boldness of some of the entrepreneurs who are maybe too bold. But without AI, we will not see any changes, because people are not producing new people in the scale needed. And there are many diseases. If you look at the industry, there are not many drugs for chronic diseases. They usually appear once every 1 or 2 decades, well, apart from the oncology medicine. That means that the model that we have right now for drug development is not working, but it will also lead to the fact that we will not be able to resolve demographic challenges. You know, the more technology, the more diagram, everything doubles very quickly, like the processor time and the intelligence of the agents. There's only one thing that increases in the drug development: the cost for developing drugs. That means that we cannot do things in the standard, typical way, and AI is a great hope. It reflects one thing. We used to make trials within animals. You can kill a mouse in 8 weeks by giving them McDonald's food, but you cannot, I mean, people will not die in the weeks as if they only eat McDonald's. So you need human data to understand that, and without AI, we won't be able to navigate all this data. This is why I'm talking about AI. This is why we're applying AI, and we are sharing all this information. Stanislav, do you agree with the fact that there's a lot of data, 500 million people with digitized health record, 7-8 million passed the genetic test? Is it a lot or not? What does that mean for the industry? Well, unfortunately, these data are not very wide. 500 million medical records, they're not based on a large number of parameters, because we can see some duplicating things there. These data are not very diverse, but then the volume of this data will increase for sure, because there is a growing appetite towards this data, because people are starting to think more about their health. They look at it from a digital perspective and their health, but there's not a lot of data, really. The majority of companies that train models say that there is a problem with the volume of data. And I would like to ask you again, the female part of our panel is going to discuss legalization, but, well, that's our specialty. And we said that Anna has in her hands the youth of Khloe and Kim Kardashian. Anyway, I'll ask you to talk about the case. I think that she had to go to Mexico or Honduras. In Mexico. Yeah, so that means that, first of all, we need to talk about the fact that aging and losing some of the cognitive functions is something that we need to face and to address and to prioritize. And on the other hand, we need less regulation, state regulation, if we're talking about the real development of this area. Yes, with the story with Kardashian, that's kind of a byproduct, really. The main idea that I voiced is related with the regulations, because if we want to develop longevity therapy, it's very hard to do as part of the classical regulations. We have a biotech company in Russia, and there we do the classical development of the drugs, of medications and other things, but we target specific diseases there. The question here now, how can we design therapies if it's not possible due to regulation? There are some alternative regulations. There's a special economic zone in Honduras. It's called Prospera. On the legal regulation level, they said that for the 50 years we have this zone, and according to the constitution, various experimental therapies can be applied within this area to make sure that these therapies can be then rolled out to the customer base that are interested in longevity. There's a lot of special economic zones around the world, but in terms of biotech, that's the main one. There's a couple of others that are just emerging, but this is one of them. And we have launched this medication there, Russian medication, by the way, that helps to update the capillary system, capillary network that deteriorates with age. And it was for the patients with the ischemic problems of the legs. Sometimes these people with bad capillaries there in the legs, they have problems walking. Some lead to amputations. And we can do our treatment there legally, and Kardashians use that for preventive purposes. They do not have any ischemia, but they went to the special economic zone to get the medication. I think I would like to change the focus of our discussion, this preventive treatment, because they don't have ischemia, but the byproduct, the side effect. When we talk about biotech, everyone has heard about Ozempic. Okay, who has heard about Ozempic? Those present here, yeah, you have heard about Ozempic. Thank you very much. I understood. I mean, I appreciated the fact that we are on the same page here in terms of awareness, and this is a cultural phenomenon, really, not only a medical phenomenon. At the same time, Novo Nordisk, a Danish company that produces Ozempic, its market cap is larger than the GDP of Denmark, where it is located. This medication, I mean, the diabetes story, becoming thinner and fitter story, that's important, but the fact that it can extend your lifespan by 2-3 years, you know, this it's like with this ischemia story. I mean, can be used for different purposes. But anyway, this a fantastic showcase. What it is about, what is behind it? Do you believe that these stories that would be similar to Ozempic could be could be ruled out. Really, it is the outlook for longevity and biotech industry, and we should have more success stories like that, not just some unique cases. Can it be scaled? I think that longevity is the field that should become this large success story. I think the first trillionaires will be in longevity. Because this is of critical importance. As for Ozempic, I have my own opinion. I think you shouldn't call it this anti-age medication, because for Ozempic, we take people with a specific disease. So we do not take people who would use preventive health practices, because it will do more bad than good. It can extend the life of the diseased people, of people with disease. But if I take a smoker and ask him not to smoke, then the life will be extended. The risks of cancer and heart diseases will drop dramatically just by quitting smoking. The effect will be larger than that from Ozempic. So I do fully support the fact that you should develop the medications, and Piotr is targeting diseases. He's doing that, and he's doing a fantastic job. But I think we are focusing on the diseases here. But if you talk about aging and early stages, we do not really focus on that. We do not make a lot of research here, and we do not send a lot of resources to this end. So Ozempic may be not the showcase. Yeah, my question is to make sure that we understand the potential of a longevity biotech, because Ozempic has been very successful, and it is so large scale. It would be great that longevity medications might have the same outlook. But we see a lot of barriers in longevity. And Stanislav, I would like to ask you, do you believe in the fantastic potential of longevity in biotech? Rank from 1 to 10. Potential of longevity in biotech. The question, when? So, okay, I believe that, and for that you need to live a long life. Agreed. What do we need to focus on to unlock this potential? We need to compute, to calculate. We need to have more data for compute. We need to train models. We need to use AI to make the transactions and operations simpler and cheaper. Like Piotr and his company, they are making the clinical trials cheaper. That's an important thing. In a nutshell, our DNA has a blueprint for aging, and our tests is a text, and we can design it so as to basically write new genes. So data are text, and that means that all the effects of the scale are applicable to it as to the generative models. Piotr, the same question to you. I would try to guess your answer based on your previous answer, but I stand to be corrected. So if we talk about the following, what can really speed up the unlocking of longevity biotech potential? Is it something that is related to the development of the new medication, or are we talking about a totally different thing? A few words to support Ozempic. Ozempic does not have a lot of effects, a lot of side effects, but try to work out when on a strict diet. But it is the medication that decreases the risks and the symptoms that are not only stated on the packaging, but also it drives down the risks, including of other diseases, including neurodegenerative diseases. As for the Ozempic, there is an important lesson to draw. The patent life of Ozempic has almost ended, and that's answering the question about the investment. The pharmaceutical company was $0.5 trillion in valuation. That was like Nvidia and Amazon and others. Because pharmaceutical companies are quite small, and this drugstore business became this huge business. And well, it's no surprise that the companies that, like Vivivia, that were developing the diabetes medications, gave the patent to Adizes, who is developing other drugs, because the example of Ozempic showed that if you prolong the lifespan by 1 year, your company will have a valuation of hundreds of millions of dollars. There was a hypothesis that was voiced in 2022 by Sam Altman. Sam Altman is a visionary, obviously, but for those who are serious investors, not just visionaries and people with a lot of money, they now have an argument that longevity is a new thing. For a company that has created a similar example, great example of Ozempic, the question is what to do next, because the cancer medication is not promising, because something like Ozempic will be sold very efficiently. The question now is that the longevity can deliver even better returns. And the last thing I would like to tell you in terms of what to do, let's go back to Ozempic lesson. The patent life has ended. Why this miracle medication? Why we didn't know about that? As Ozempic was given to people, it was understood that the weight goes down. Why? Because why people were fat? Because they didn't move, because they were eating junk food. That's the same with longevity. Tomorrow we'll have AI and it will resolve everything, so we don't need to develop longevity medication. That's a bad narrative. The second bad narrative.
So it's about eating less and, eating Ozempic and you will live forever. Brian Johnson, for example, doesn't want to die at all. He's not going to. So that's the narrative. So others will earn money on Ozempic by Nordisk, and others will earn money. And this is something that we need to be mindful of and start developing the drug against aging. Deep in my heart, I believe that the narrative about obesity is really ingenious, especially when we draw a parallel with aging and what we talked about in the past. And this is a great metaphor that's put things in their own places now. Now let's delve deeper into the specific niches. I have quick questions for all of our speakers, and it goes like this. Disregard the number that is in the question. This number was necessary for me to take the money way out of the conversation so that we could look at the scientific potential or some other potential of various segments within longevity so that we could stop thinking about money in the good sense of the word. And so the question goes like this. If Sberbank gifts you $8 billion without any qualifications, no commission, and you can invest $1 billion in a specific niche related to longevity, what is it going to be and why? Let's start with you, Stanislav, just for variety's sake. That's not exactly my area of expertise, but I would invest it in the synthesis of nucleotide sequences in the factory of genes so that we could design and produce the genes we need. This technology does exist, but it's the question of length, stability, and the range of functionality and delivery means. A question from a lamer. What does it give me or you and average people? Mice live for 2 years, people live to 90. Greenland sharks live to 500 years. We have different genes. We can take certain genes from the animals that allow them to live longer, and that's one. And we can also design genes that hadn't existed in nature and make them our own. So we're talking about a synthesis of sequences on an industrial scale. That's the key. There's a project, a resynthesis of human genome from scratch. And in about 7 years or 10, we are going to be able to synthesize human DNA, 3 billion pairs from scratch. That's what where I would invest. Anna, where would you invest? I would build a longevity city, perhaps on the basis of Sber City. What is that going to be? An elderly people home? I haven't finished yet. I would build a separate regulatory area where one could be dealing with and treating earlier onset aging, and where you would be able to do clinical trials for dependencies on age of certain things. And for that, you need to have regulatory framework. For that, you need to have straightforward access to production, because in biotech, this is indeed a major impediment and an issue. It's a production boutique with various types of things that we need to produce, molecules of different kinds. Because aging is a whole set of issues. It would need an arsenal of molecules and therapies to address this from all angles in a comprehensive way. That's why I believe that longevity cities and 100 clinical trials. Wow, excellent. Piotr, let's see what you can offer us in response to what we do. Give you $1 billion, and you can select any niche you would invest in. First of all, I'm taking the billion. And $1 billion, and just to give the context, Joe Bezos invested in Malthus Lab as a seed stage round, $3 billion. Okay, we'll give you $1 billion for seed. This is 3 times less than what he used. But thanks to the methodology, we'll succeed. What I would do, I would join in with Stanislav. A drug that will, extend life for several years will be created without us. You can do this by changing your lifestyle, but there's a whole industry that works on that, and they treat diseases. But to deal with the problems that we started talking about, we need drugs that would extend lifespan by more than 10 years. And we need to use data not just from humans, even in other mammals, and we can learn a lot from them. A lot of different tricks can be learned from them. There are animals that live for a very long time, and some of them don't age or nearly don't age. That's why we need to have money to gather a lot of molecular data about the mammals that age with different pace, a different age. And that's $100 million per data set. That's how much you need now. And let's stay within this conversation about niches and startups. Stanislav, you had this wonderful point you made that if you want to learn something, you need to create your own startup. Was that your approach to Biodata? That's how it came about, or was there a different story behind it? In general, Biodata was thought of as a family office for my family. Yes, I wanted to figure this out. But when you come to a clinic and you say that you are a patient and you want some services, they look at you one way. But when you come from a company and say that you are a CEO of a company, they look at you differently. It started as an internal framework, and then it turned out evolved into a startup, and goes beyond just interest in health. But to be more serious in answering your question, of course, if you can not do a startup, don't do a startup. But nevertheless, your format is B2C. Okay, go ahead. It just that B2B doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay. But if we are to talk about B2C as a format, are there some sub-niches that you could identify? Maybe there's someone in the room who is thinking about where to invest. What can really be promising over the next several years? In the B2C segment, all startups that are similar to ours, there's one problem that is common. They need to build an interface for data input so that it would be interesting and nice for people to use it. And we haven't resolved it yet. We are close to getting it resolved, but we're not there yet. Those who can teach people to gather data and do this in a playful way, then or in a gamely way, they will be able to win. Our brain is not designed to think about what's going to happen to us in 20 years when we age. That's what the evolution taught us. We're not stupid, but the evolution taught us that we need to think about today or tonight and not about what's going to happen in 20 years. So the only way to do this is to make people derive pleasure out of gathering data. Wonderful. Piotr, how did you arrive at your idea of a startup? As I was reading your interview, I saw this point that you don't have a personal goal of fighting aging. It's a mission, not just for you, but for all. Because you get it as a side effect as a human. I'm not a biologist or a doctor. I'm a physicist by background. I was involved in theoretical physics. And there were very high standards back then with regard to what was considered to be good science. If you look at what happened 10 years, the string theory is dead. The quantum computer is not there yet. And if you set a big task before yourself, you would see that the 21st century is the age of medicines. I was shown at one point some animals that never age, like hydra or mollusks of some kind. But when they showed me mammals that don't age, I was really impressed. If you can make a discovery like this in an area where people have been involved in for 10,000 years, and you can make this discovery in the 21st century, it means that this is a new area, and this requires a talent to get this result. And I would like to urge everyone, this is the best way to apply your intelligence in the 21st century. And I can't argue with that. And if we are to talk about your specific area of expertise, you are using the B2B format. You work with major pharmaceutical companies. In essence, and correct me if I go wrong, you analyze health data for them in order to help them identify any tendencies, trends, and make connections so that they would then make drugs that would work regardless of one's age. Where else there are promising, or are there promising areas for a startup if you're talking about a B2B format at this point in time? Biotech is a very complex thing. Nearly all biotech companies are B2B. There are no companies that start developing drugs and then start selling them, doing marketing and government relations. If you look at this field, it's almost all of it B2B. And in biotech, you develop a medical technology. You have excellent patent protection. And so I would like to urge everyone who wants to invest, go to biotech. This is where you would have a legal monopoly. And if you have something that works, you are protected for 20 years, which is unique. And if this starts working, and if you're doing a study, then you make a prediction, then you start trials with animal data, then human data. At each of these stages, the cost of your development goes up tenfold. 10 years ago, in order to get your own hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, you had to conduct clinical trials. But nowadays, because the big pharma had forgotten to invest in major studies, and Ozempic is now leaving the protection zone by the patent. And there are other drugs that are about to join them, and all of the drugs are going to be produced as generics, like a set of vitamins. They would have to get involved in biology, and they're not really well at doing that. And so this is an excellent niche for startups. I would call them tech bio, not biotech. It's going to be a new animal on this market. It's a biotech that would use various means, including AI and other interesting technologies, to basically unravel a human biology, and then Big Pharma would take those products under development. It's not a contract-based work. They will pay money to us up front, and as we go through various stages of development, we recently signed a contract with a company that developed a peroral form of Ozempic, and that's why I said that they're not really that very well versed in biology, and that is a contract that is worth several $billion. Anna, if we are to count in millions of dollars, and or rather in points, would you say that the development of this industry in Russia is, or globally, whether it's well developed? Nowhere in the world it is well developed. Well, okay, we've discussed this to some point, and Piotr has been saying several times about the cost of trials and research, and it is clear that if it is in long-term and expensive research, it's not clear where one can get money. It's good to have 1 billion from there, the one that we've just made up. If we are to talk about the longevity companies, they have this regulatory feature, nuance that I've referred to earlier. There are several companies there that are trying to work on the root causes of aging, and these are the ones that are funded by billionaires like Sam Altman with his Altus Lab, and Retrobio is another example. They recently developed a molecule that they want to launch a clinical trial of at the end of this year, which is very soon. And the idea is to study the process of aging that is related to ontophagy. And they need to be able to go to the market, and they are targeting the Alzheimer's disease. Maybe they will succeed, but the Alzheimer's is a very complicated disease, and there hasn't been a single effective drug to treat it effectively. And if they would go to an area covered by some regulatory framework, and where you would do some measurements, and following that produce a molecule, then you would have more chances to succeed. And then those drugs would go to the market. But since they're focusing on the Alzheimer's, the question of whether they will succeed or not, it's a slim chance of success. And one drug might not be a solution. And there are not a lot of companies that emerge in this market because they don't know how to move forward with rolling this out. We have about 15 minutes left, and I'm at a crossroads. Let's see what is going to be more interesting for you. We've agreed that there would be 2 more units, and I see that we only have time to cover 1 unit. The first unit has to do, or the first topic has to do with supporting effectiveness, what's to be done, because the speakers here are excellent experts in this field. And the second theme, or topic, is more of a philosophical nature. More profound. Okay, let's vote. Who's voting for the first topic and who's voting for the second? I'm sorry, we are going to the philosophical realm. And I think I've somewhat cheated here because I really wanted to talk about the second topic more than anything else. I don't think I'm going to reveal any secret to anyone, because I can say that we, of course, get prepared for sessions like this. Not that we write down questions and answers, but we are thinking about the topics that might be of interest. And as part of one of such discussions, I was given this wonderful idea that I rolled in my head for some time. And here's how it goes. Imagine if we can extend the lifespan of one excellent professional. We started thinking about people of the likes of Landau, Kapitsa, or Sergei Korolev. What if we had given them 5, 10 more years? What would happen to mankind if they could be added extra time at the peak of their cognitive development and scientific development, if more time was given to them? And I think Piotr has already touched upon this matter in one of his statements. It's clear that we need to start acting now because the studies take a long time. And a lot of time passes from the moment an idea is conceived to the moment it becomes fleshed out. Now we need to identify priorities as to what are going to be the product that we will get in some 10 years' time. Piotr, what do we need? What is the ideal or perfect final result of your activities, of your efforts, or the result of the work of a longevity startup? Let's say we are going to live until 150 years of age and we still preserve our cognitive functions intact. Well, talking about 150 years lifespan is hard. Some people might blame us for cheating, but it's important to think about it and talk about it. I said at the very beginning, a lot depends on what we want to achieve, because we are imagining our future as investors and scientists. And if we want to continue to want to treat certain diseases, but there will be some people that would not want it. As you know, the average lifespan around the world is growing, and in some countries it is reaching 80, or the age of 80. But the decline of functions is happening inevitably. At 120 and 150 years of age, people will be healthy, but they will have a zero cognitive ability. Ask people in the street whether they want to live long. They would say, most likely, no. Intuitively, they understand that that's going to be their future. We will treat you until you get older, and you will be worse and worse off. And the first thing we need to start wanting is to get around this problem of the decline of cognitive function. And, you know, some people like whales, others like bats. And these animals have the decline of functions that is happening very slowly, 10 times slower than with other animals of their size. That's the area we need to focus on. And after we have started a family, after we can take risks in introducing certain technologies, it's like medical technology is indistinguishable from poison. You need to start your family before that. So we need to study the technologies that would stop aging. People like that will not become immortal. They will still have the risk of getting in an accident or dying of some disease or trauma. But our chances of getting another disease as we grow age is doubled with every 10 years. And this process needs to be stopped. And that's when people will be able to gather new experience and be productive, staying within the same physical shape. That's the future we want to get into. And if we think even further than that, after this demographic transition is over in 3 or 4 generations, things are going to be good. The moles will stop being aging, and people will be using the same technology not to age. But what's going to happen to us and to our grandchildren will be dependent upon what we are going to decide now collectively. If people close their eyes and follow the other blind people into the abyss, trying to get the longer life without dealing with the age, will take us into the future we don't want to be in. But those who want to stop aging and prioritize cost on that, because we don't want to be in a society that's dominated by invalids. For that, we need to do outreach, we need to do awareness raising, and we need to work with the investors. And of course, you need to be a visionary and investor. And they want to do the right things, because be afraid of what you want, because sometimes your wishes may come true. We are at that critical juncture where we want the right thing.
Yes, thank you very much. I do agree with you, and I would like to get this word, build on this word that we would want. Do you want to? It is a fact. Up to what age, approximately, you will be able to reach? That will not be such a huge figure. And you have a great idea that in 100-year-old can have a full-fledged, healthy life, and that there are some stereotypes in the society that says that it's not real. So our outreach efforts should focus not only on technologies and health care and staying fit, but we need to change the mentality to make sure that we do not limit ourselves, and as Piotr said, that we would want to live longer. Yeah, actually, I'm a radical here. I'm for radical extension of life, you know, going up to forever, living forever. So we're talking about the paradigm shift. In the society currently, it is a norm that we die from aging. But if, for example, in 19th century, I would say that humans will go to space, people would think me crazy. And in a couple of hundreds of years, this aging problem will be resolved, maybe fully. Will we be witness to this resolution? I do not know. Well, Piotr said 3 or 4 generations. That's quite sad, but well, what can we do? I think everything is in our hands. I mean, we have some limiting factors that do not allow us to test these therapies. There is quite a lot of molecules on the market that can be repositioned, so they have showed that they're safe, but we just use them for diseases. And in our example with the capillary network, that's just one factor where we can update people, upgrade people, and rejuvenate them, preventing some big problems to happen. And if we take these therapies from the shelf and start using them based on age and some age indicators and to accelerate this process, maybe that might happen, and we will be able to witness that, and we will save our parents from dying and ourselves from dying. So maybe I think the audience has to ask the question, what is their priority? What is the most important thing for them? If it's life that can give us everything, then maybe you should also contribute to speed up this process. Building on that idea, Stanislav, I really liked your idea here. One of your philosophical idea is this is my favorite philosophical idea. You cannot live for 400 years if you live like a 70-year-old. The psychological health is related to losing the goal of your life and the sense, the idea of your life. How do we need to address that? The ultra-centenarians who live for more than 110 years are very diverse. They have different genetics, they have different climates, different race, different diets. So it's many things are different. But there's one thing that unites them all. They are socialized. They do need to go outside their home every day. They have some goal, some service. So saving these cognitive abilities and understanding your value in the world is the thing that unites everyone who can live a long life. If we cannot resolve the problems with our mental health, if we cannot control it, we cannot extend the lifespan of the people. While we do not have all other technologies, we need to focus on that, because even if we have these, we cannot extend these people's life, you know. So living up to 400 years, well, but can you imagine how many ideas can you cram in the life or that is 400 years old? That's quite a lot. Now, there were a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll ask one question. The key answer to any question is the end-to-end, full-fledged approach. But if we're talking about ensuring our efficiency and saving our cognitive abilities and our functionality, you are 40 or 50 or 30 years old. Can you name one thing that you should do already today that is scientifically proven to lead to a good result in the future? Piotr, let's start with you. What do you do? Well, not to give the standard advice about smoking and food and diet. The social status for people is very important. It is very much related to your mental health. So please make sure that your mental health is is safeguarded, it will help you not only for material success. And you, Anna? Two things. Think and read about longevity therapy, because if you know something about the world, I mean, about the world of longevity, you know where to move forward and how to move forward. And, you know, not many people look at their HRV, heart rate variability. It shows you the balance of sympathetic and parasympathetic system. And there is an app that helps you to breathe properly and to look at your biological feedback and how you change that heart rate variability. Because, well, stress is something that is with us. It's something that is inevitable in your life. Goes down with age, by the way, very significantly. Well, Piotr said that we should not mention some things like trivial things like smoking in sports, but sports. And it helps to increase the neurotraffic factor release that protects our brain. So it's not only for sports and activity. Sports activity is not only about muscles. It's about and heart. It's about brain. As for the biohack, I would be unorthodox really, but I would talk about lithium in water. In areas where there's a lot of lithium in water, in these areas there's less likelihood of dementia and suicides. And lithium is contained in the mineral water, and this is it has small contents of lithium. But I'm not a doctor, I cannot recommend you that, but these are the quantities that your body might be able to process. We have just a couple of minutes. Maybe we should spend them on thinking about longevity and about all of the other things that we can do. Oh, yeah, by the way, I forgot, and because I wanted to ask you to help me, any session as people that stand behind the scenes, and there are two people behind the scenes of this session. This is Vasily and Nika. A round of applause for them. We were debating very hard to make this session. We were debating with them. Anyway, thank you so much for this fantastic and outstanding session.